It was what I'd expected, but my friend's face told me he was still shocked. I'm not sure if he trusted me too much or if he'd already convinced himself the place was haunted. Either way, before I could warn him not to spook the old man, he'd marched out of the bedroom and blurted out to his dad, "Dad, we need to talk again, but you've got to believe me." Like the saying goes, once the bowstring's drawn, there's no going back. So I followed him out, sat back in my original spot, and laid out everything I'd seen with the compass, word for word, to the old man. At first, his dad wasn't buying it. But I'm a pro at this. I showed him hard proof. I took him to his bed, showed him the compass, and explained what each direction meant and what it all added up to. With solid academic and practical evidence, he finally came around. Back in the living room, he plopped down on the sofa, didn't touch his wine, ignored the TV, and looked nervous, maybe even a little scared. He didn't say a word for a long time. Then my friend started reassuring him, saying he'd noticed something off about the house for a while now, and that's why he'd brought me here today to sort it out. He told his dad that the old lady biting his toes every night wasn't a dream. His dad had really run into a ghost. He pointed at the old man's toenails, and his dad leaned over to look. My friend kept going, "Those are real, bite marks from a ghost. You've got to trust me, my friend's an expert at this. He can help us." Then he pointed at me. I told his dad, "Based on what's happening and the reaction by your bed, I'm certain there's a ghost. But it's not a strong one, so it shouldn't be too hard to deal with." That said, everything's got a cause. I can't just banish this ghost without knowing why it's here. I need to figure out what's behind it before I can take it away for you. My friend cut in, arguing, "Why bother with all that? Just do your thing and get rid of it. Humans and ghosts don't mix. What's the big deal? Letting it slide is the real crime." I thought he was full of it, but there was no way I'd ditch my principles over his self-preservation instincts. So, with a stern, righteous look, I told him coolly, "That's my rule." He couldn't sway me, and with no other options, he had to go along. That's one perk of my line of work. If you don't get it, keep quiet. No matter how big a shot you are, if you're coming to me for help, you'd better listen up. It hit me then, thinking back to a movie I saw as a kid with Wang Shi. He played a murderer who was also a barber. He loved that job because no matter how rich or powerful his clients were, they had to bow their heads to him. I started asking his dad, "When was the last time you had that nightmare?" Without hesitation, he said, "Yesterday, no, early this morning." I followed up, "How often does it happen?" He said, "Pretty much every day, but I'd wake up groggy and forget until you brought it up, and then it came back to me." I asked, "Did the old lady say anything else besides sex?" He said, "Nope, just that one word, over and over." The first few days, I'd struggle a bit when I saw her on me, but eventually I gave up. I couldn't shake her off anyway. I figured it was just a dream, so I let her chew. Trying to get clear answers from an old guy who mixes up dreams and reality? Not exactly a walk in the park. I asked again, "Do you remember the first day this started? Can you tell me about it?" He said it was some specific date. I pressed, "What did you do around that day? Anything stick out?" He thought for a bit and said, "Same old stuff, hanging out with the guys in the courtyard, then home to cook, eat, and sleep. Oh, wait, the day before, I bought a stamp from a collector buddy. That's when I got a hunch, though I wasn't sure yet. So I asked, was that collector a factory worker?" He said, "No, just a stamp enthusiast I met at the market." Then it clicked. My friend had mentioned over dinner that his dad was obsessed with stamp collecting. And after buying that stamp, the weird stuff started. Could the stamp be the problem? A ghost attached to it, maybe? I'd never seen anything like it. In all my cases, when a ghost latches onto something, there's usually a direct connection. Was the seller some old lady with a foot-biting fetish who, after kicking the bucket, felt ripped off about the stamp and came back to mess with an old guy she found snoozing? No way, that's nuts. I couldn't wrap my head around it, so I said, "Uncle, can I see that stamp?" He gave me a grumpy look and asked what I wanted with it. I cursed under my breath, but said, "Just a peek, I won't take it, promise." He shuffled into the bedroom, pulled his stamp album from under his pillow, came back to the living room, and sat next to me. He flipped through it page by page, then stopped at a 20-cent stamp from 1991 with tweezers. It was grayish-white, with green leaves and white flowers, and rhododendron written at the bottom right. There was half a postmark on it. Only January 8th, 30, and Cheeman Post were visible. If I had to guess, it was probably Chukhimen Post in full. The postmark meant it had been used on an envelope mailed at some point. So this stamp had carried a letter. A letter? What kind? A letter. Then it hit me, the old lady's sex. I took a wild guess. Maybe sex was her saying letter and she was tied to it, maybe the sender or the recipient. I pulled out my compass again, held it near the stamp, and it spun like crazy. That pretty much clinched it. The ghost in the house was because of this stamp. I asked his dad, "Can you get in touch with the guy who sold you this stamp? The original owner, I mean." He said, "Sure, I've bought and traded plenty with him." I said, "Can you come with us to find him? I need to ask him face to face about the whole story so I can help you get rid of this ghost." He flipped through his phone book, called the guy who said he was at the Zhongxing Road Market and to come meet him there. We hung up and headed out. Since I'd been drinking that day, I didn't drive. It was a 10-minute walk to the Zhongxing Road Market. I'd been there before. Lots of my clients had picked up haunted junk from places like that. On the way, I kept telling the old man, from now on, steer clear of stuff with sketchy origins, especially bottles, jars, or coins dug up from graves. Those were made for rituals, and some get spirits stuck to them. Buy one, and it thinks you're its owner, popping out to say hi or showing up at night to mess with you. You wouldn't handle that well. Not long after we got to the market, the old man led us to the collector. Stepping into his shop, it hit me why the old lady's ghost hadn't bothered him before he sold the stamp. This guy must have studied Taoist stuff. His shop was decked out with copper mirrors, bagua symbols, and swords. A collector like him probably had the same gear at home. I figured the ghost skipped him and went for the old man because this guy had real, legit tools to keep evil at bay. I couldn't check his house to confirm, but it made sense. So I asked the collector, "Where'd you get this stamp you sold him?" He said he'd stumbled across it in the 90s and kept it for years. I asked, "Why'd you, a collector, keep a used postmark stamp?" He said it was a fluke. Back then, he was still at his job. One day after work, he found a letter in his mailbox, wrong address, meant for the folks upstairs, but dropped in his box by mistake. Being a good guy, he knocked on their door, but no one answered. He tried for days, no luck. Chatting with neighbors, he learned the family, an old man and his 2 daughters, had moved out months ago. With no way to reach them, he kept the letter. The stamp caught his eye, and since he couldn't find the owners, he peeled it off. Then curiosity got the better of him, and he read it. I wanted to call him out. Opening someone else's mail is illegal and nosy as hell, but getting the full story mattered more. So I asked, "What was in the letter? Do you still have it? Can we see it?" He sighed and said, "Yeah, I've got it." Almost tossed it a few times, but I couldn't let it go. He rummaged through his shop's bookshelf, pulled out an old white rabbit candy tin, opened it, and handed me the letter. The yellow craft envelope had faded fountain pen writing that read, "Please deliver to specific address and recipient." The handwriting looked feminine, probably that old lady's. The torn stamp's edge still had the postmark, August 30th, 1991, Chukhimen Post. So, with a weird mix of feelings, I snapped a photo of the letter and read it through. Here's the story it told. Back in 1955, during the early waves of the educated youth to the countryside movement, a woman named Qiu, meaning autumn, and a man named Hua, meaning prosperity, were sent to Shuijiang from different places. Shuijiang was a dirt-poor spot back then. Hua worked as a farmer there, while Qiu, with her higher education, taught as a substitute in the village. She was 8 years older than him. They met when Hua secretly killed and ate the school's guard dog, and Qiu led the teachers and students to confront him. But later, they hit it off. Some things just can't be stopped once they start. These two, who'd started as enemies, fell into a wild, older woman-younger man romance. Hua was just 20, Qiu was pushing 30. Their production team soon found out. At first, folks didn't care about them dating, but since she was older and more educated, Busybodies started whispering stuff like old cow munching young grass. Hua and Chiu felt the sting but kept quiet. When their countryside stint ended, they promised that after wrapping up their reports, Chiu would find Hua in Chongqing. After parting, they sorted their affairs, and Chiu tracked him down in Chongqing. When Hua excitedly took her to meet his family and popped the question, his whole clan shot it down. His grandpa even threatened to die if they didn't split, so Hua ran off with Chiu. They lived their quiet little life for a few years until Hua couldn't shake his homesickness. He secretly wrote home and got a reply. His grandpa was dying and wanted to see his grandson one last time or he'd never rest in peace. Hua was a dutiful son, so he made up an excuse about some errands and snuck back home. By the time he got there, his grandpa was gone. Torn up with guilt, he couldn't say no to his family's pleas to stay, even though he loved Chiu. They pinned the blame for his grandpa's last wish on her. In the end, Hua stayed put. For decades after, Chiu went to Chongqing over and over to find Hua, but never did. From their time together, she'd heard him mention living near Chukimen, so she'd stay there on her searches. Years of nothing led her to leave her contact info and some cash with a local herbalist in Chukimen, asking him to write if he heard anything about Hua. Heartbroken, she went back to her hometown. Whenever she missed him, she'd write letters, never knowing where to send them. Then, the herbalist came through with Hua's exact address, but it was spring 1991, and Chiu was nearly 70. Stubborn as ever, she packed up 30 years' worth of letters she'd written to Hua, plus all her worldly goods, and went to his hometown alone. When she found his place using the herbalist's directions, Hua's 2 daughters, a generation younger, beat and cursed her out, driving her off. While watched, hurting but helpless, he needed them to care for him in his old age. All those years, Chiu had clung to the belief that Hua stayed true to their love like she had. It never crossed her mind that he'd left without a word and started a new family back home. Her life, nearly 70 years of loyalty, felt like a cruel joke. Crushed, she fell ill in a hotel and couldn't get up. The emotional hit made her cough up blood. Realizing her days were numbered, she shakily wrote this letter to Hua. At the end, beyond her undying love and the pain of his betrayal, she added a poem. My love for you has rotted to the bone. Only when dying do I know to stop. In this fleeting world, there was never any Hua. How could there be decades of Chiu? I'm no scholar, but that poem hit me like a sucker punch right to the softest part of my heart. Standing there years later, with buyers and gawkers milling around, I couldn't hold back the tears, they just poured out. Crying solo's no fun, though. I glanced over and my friend and his dad were wiping tears too, lips trembling. I finally got why the collector couldn't ditch this letter. Tossing a piece of paper is easy. Letting go of a story and a memory? That's brutal. It clicked why Chiu's ghost kept showing up. This was her last letter to her love, one with an address, but it never made it. To her, it wasn't because Hua had moved, it was because the stamp got torn off, losing its postage, so it never reached him. That's why she haunted the old man's house every night, stuck repeating her one dying wish. You could feel it, getting this letter to Grandpa. Hua was her final goal in this world. I told the collector, I'd like you to sell me this letter. I'll track down its rightful recipient for you. He said, take it, I'm giving it to you, but I won't sell it. I got what he meant, and I really got it. With the envelope and stamp in hand, we headed back to the factory. After that, I guided her spirit with the utmost respect. I didn't just want Chiu to pass on peacefully. I wanted her to know that me, some random younger guy, would see her wish through. Thank you for your story. After sending her off, I told my friend and his dad to plant a rhododendron on the west side of their balcony to honor Chiu's spirit in the afterlife. Over the next, while I teamed up with the collector, and after asking around everywhere, we tracked down Grandpa Hua. Sadly, he'd passed in 1997. So, I picked a good day, brought my friend along, and went to Hua's grave. I fixed up the letter, stuck the stamp back on neatly, sealed it, lit 3 incense sticks in front of his tomb, and burned the letter for him. May you both rest in peace, and if there's a next life, Please be together. May we hold each other dear till we meet again and not part like Chio and Hua. If you enjoyed my video, please subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching. See you next time.